Hey everybody, Tekking101 here, and happy Halloween to all. How well did this work out? Seriously. Talking about Gekko Moriah, the spookiest out of all the Warlords. Well, at least he was at his initial appearance. Now he's just kind of like a big onion joke of a human being. I guess he's a human being, I don't know. He's one of those characters in One Piece that just look really fucking weird, or like, is he part of another tribe, or is he just a human that had like severe birth defects? I don't know. Well, anyway, Moria, despite not appearing very much in the story, he only really appeared in his, the arc that he was centered around, Thriller Bark, which is one of my favorite arcs in One Piece. Like, I'm always into horror and shit like that, and Oda took a bunch of inspirations from different, music with Thriller, the zombie dance, and old monster movies. You had the freaky, Thriller Bark, which is like, a dark, foggy forest filled with zombies, and then you had a mysterious mansion, and then you had a huge, like, medieval-style castle behind that, and there's ghosts, and there's pretty much every kind of, ghoul that you can find in the night that's hidden somewhere within this realm. You have wild beasts roaming around. It's crazy. I love the aesthetic. I love the tone of the arc, and Moria is at the center of it all. Now, despite only really appearing in Thriller Bark, he did appear later on in Marineford, but didn't really get a lot of focus on him. Pretty much just, I think he got some more stuff with the anime, but pretty much it's just Jinbei knocks his ass out, and then you had the shit with Doflamingo at the end, which I'll get into. There's also a lot of stuff involving Moria that's SBS only. That's like extra stuff that Oda added on later. But, so let's talk about the history of Moria first. Now, we don't really know a lot about the history of him. It's very vague. But the thing you got to take away from it mostly is his dealings with Kaido. He had an encounter with Kaido, one of the four emperors, back before he started Thriller Bark, back before, I think just after he became a warlord. He was more of a typical pirate back then. He had a crew of normal human beings that were just sailing the new world. Something happened. I don't know if Moria started shit. I don't know if Kaido started shit, but something happened involving Kaido, and Moria's entire crew was wiped the fuck out, except for Moria. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy, too, because it really gives us an idea. Like, this was the first part in the story where we got to understand just how strong a Yonko was, like the general power level of an emperor. Because remember, this was right after Enies Lobby when we found out about the four emperors. Now, we knew about Shanks since the beginning of the series, obviously, and we knew about Whitebeard since the end of the Alabasta arc, but we didn't really have a gauge on how strong they were. We knew they were big-time pirates, but we didn't know like what their power level was at. Right? So, Enies Lobby, Garp explains four emperors, he gives them their names, and, he doesn't give the name Kaido, we learned that from Moria, but Moria explains that even as a warlord, Kaido completely wiped out his crew, save for himself. So, we get a good idea the first time in the series. Oda drops a little bit of foreshadowing, like, these emperors, you do not fuck with them, right? Now, Moria, despite being a slovenly, very slothful, he lazes around, lets other people do the work for him. His motto is like, hurry up and make me king of the pirates. I don't want to do any work myself. You guys figure this shit out, right? Despite being that, despite not really giving a shit about a lot of people around him, he seems to have that kind of personality. He did truly care about his first crew. Whenever it gets brought up, yeah, he's like, we don't talk about the old crew. It's the new crew now. They're full of zombies and they can't die. Yeah, so he did care about his old crew, and after they died, after they got destroyed, after Kaido completely rips him a new asshole, which you can actually still see, there's like the stitches on his neck there, he decided, I'm gonna make an army of zombies. I'm gonna make the zombies my new pirate crew, and zombies cannot die. They will die, and they can be brought right back to life. So, that's what I want to do, and that's where he goes and starts his plan to make Thriller Bark. I don't know if he had the Kage no Mi before he encountered Kaido or afterwards, but after that, about 10 years prior to the start of the story, he set out to gather his commanders, the Mysterious Four, and then converted an entire island in the West Blue into the world's largest pirate ship, Thriller Bark, and began to amass his zombie army to try to make him king of the pirates. So, the Mysterious Four that he gathered, the first was Absalom, I believe. I don't think we know exactly how Absalom met him, who had the power of invisibility, and then we had Perona, Perona, who is the ghost girl, and Perona, you know, I think she's just really into horror and the macabre, like all that gothic shit, so I think she just went with Moria because she thought it would be fun. And then the last person they met was Dr. Hogback, and Dr. Hogback is a key player because it's his expertise in the medical field that allows him to create these stitched up marionettes, combining different body parts into like Frankenstein's monster to get really strong bodies, and then Moria uses his shadow power to make them into living, you know, zombies, like living zombies, you know, kind of abuse a term. But, okay, so as for his devil fruit, the Kage Kage no Mi, there is so much shit to cover with this, it's insane. I guess I'll just go down the line because there's a bunch of different weaknesses to it, there's a bunch of different, like, aspects to this fruit. It's one of those fruits where it all depends on the person using it. If the person using it, you know, it does it, like, in an intelligent way, and I'm not saying Moria did not use it in an intelligent way, it's just that his own personality prevents him from really going anywhere with it. He's a very, very slothful individual. But, you know, used in the right hands with the right people working under you, it can be very effective. Okay, so the first thing about the Kage Kage no Mi, the Shadow Fruit, is that it gives the user the ability to steal shadows, like right out of an old dark 1920s Warner Brothers cartoon. You know, he just takes out a giant-ass pair of scissors, shines a spotlight on his victim, and can just cut the freaking shadow off their bodies like it was made of paper. After that, he has complete control over it, and he can choose to take it into himself and make himself stronger, or he can choose to throw it into somebody else and make them stronger, or he can choose to put it into a dead body, a corpse, and make that corpse move once again. As for the person that has their shadow stolen, they immediately lose consciousness, and Moria has a practice of trying to get them off the island as quickly as possible, because they are not dead. They simply lose consciousness from losing their shadow. Once they regain consciousness, they're still just as strong as they always were. They have all the same memories. Nothing really changes about them, except they can no longer be in direct sunlight. If they're ever in direct sunlight, then their bodies will literally melt away, and they will die eventually. Now, here's the kicker, though. If the original owner of the shadow dies, even if the shadow is separated due to Moria's power, the shadow will disappear as well. The shadow will die as well as the zombie that it's inhabiting. So, this is the first problem I see with Moria's master plan, alright? So, he rips off the shadow of the strongest fighters he can find. And he realizes, like, okay, we have to make sure that these fighters, they don't regain consciousness and try to kick our ass because we stole their shadow, so let's ship them out to sea as quickly as we can. But it doesn't change the fact that if they do encounter direct sunlight, they will die. So they might not even be aware of this. So you'd figure that Moria would lose a lot of fucking zombies that way. If the guy just wakes up after losing consciousness, he's adrift in the middle of the ocean. The Florian Triangle where Thriller Bark is located is usually pretty foggy, but if they end up outside the Florian Triangle, they're just gonna die. You know, and Moria's apparently had this practice done for years. He apparently started this in the West Blue, where Thriller Bark originated from. He's stolen the shadows of people that weren't just in, you know, the Florian Triangle, but eventually he set up his base there and, you know, preyed on whatever pirate ship would wander into the fog. So that's the first problem, though. You'd think that Moria would be like, alright, well, let's just keep them drugged in the fucking dungeons of the castle and chain them up and make sure they never wake up again. Let's just knock them into a coma. You know, the freaking shadow will still stay active. You got Dr. Hawback with you, which is like an expert in freaking, okay, you got Dr. Hawback, which is an expert in drugs and shit, and then you have Perona, whose ability is indispensable, who can basically make anybody feel like he can mobilize anyone, make them feel negative, and whoever, no matter how strong they are, makes them feel, negative, and they can't move, and they don't want to do anything. So, you know, do the negative hollow shit, chain them up in the dungeon, and make Dr. Hogback drug them into a coma or something like that. It'll be a liability, but if you leave them adrift in the ocean, that just means that, oh man, I got a really strong fighter. Made a zombie out of him, and then, oh shit, he died. Oh, well, we lost the strong fighter. Okay, so that's the first issue. The next one is, zombies themselves have major weaknesses. They have weaknesses to salt and seawater, mostly because seawater, I guess, would include salt. If you get even a drop of salt into a regular-sized zombie, then that zombie will be purified. The shadow will just leave the zombie and go back into their original owner, wherever they may be. So, you gotta be really careful how you use salt, which explains why Moria has an entire storeroom of salt in Thriller Bark's kitchen. Granted, it's all bolted up and locked up tight, but you'd think that you would start going on, like, I don't know, can the human body live without salt? I feel like there would be a viable alternative for that instead of keeping, salt. Like, this is the one weakness, and we're keeping it in the place where it could be used to defeat it. Okay. But it's not without its benefits. Like I said, he can combine the shadows together into himself, and he can create Shadow Asgard, which makes all the different abilities of the shadows, all the different powers that they exhibit. It's also important to notice that the shadows themselves will retain the powers and abilities that the person that he stole it from. So if someone's really good at swordsmanship and the shadow is taken out and given to another, like a zombie, that zombie will be really good at swordsmanship, as well as retain the original personality of the person. I believe they will return the memories of themselves, like Ryuma. Ryuma didn't have Brook's memories. Ryuma had his own memories as being a samurai in Wano, but his personality and his speech pattern was very similar to Brook, and his fighting technique was Brook's. Like I said, a lot of intricacies with this fruit, but it's good. It's good because it's through this fruit, even though it's a little bit OP, it's through this fruit that the entire, arc managed to stay stitched together. It's all centered on Moria's fruit. That's just how OP it is. And there are some devil fruits out there that are incredibly OP, And Moria had 10 years to build up an entire zombie army for this, so it makes sense, right? After using a Shadow Asgard, it's a little bit ambiguous as to whether or not Moria could not control that number of shadows because he was just in a fight with Luffy. He was just in a fight with Oars, and he was inside Oars. Luffy beat the shit out of him. He was already kind of banged up, and then he decided to incorporate 1,000 shadows into himself, but he couldn't contain them. He started, puking up the shadows. He couldn't keep them inside of him. So it's a little bit ambiguous as to whether or not it's because he suffered heavy injuries beforehand, he couldn't maintain the shadows, or it's just because taking on that many shadows, even for Moria, was too much for him to handle. His consciousness started to fade away. And, if the shadows are released while he has them inside of him and he's defeated, if he loses consciousness or anything like that, he immediately loses everything. All of his shadows go away. So building up a massive army of zombies is pretty good, but you also have to be really careful because one false swoop, and if you get knocked unconscious or something like that, it's very possible that your entire army could just leave away and you're left with fucking nothing, as what happened with Moria. After his fight with the Straw Hats, Thriller Bark was left in ruins. He lost every single zombie. The Mysterious Four was scattered, and so that's part of that there. Also part of him is that he can make these little shapes and items and kind of familiars out of his own shadow. His own shadow bears special exception to these rules. He can make a Doppelman, which is a big shadow version clone of himself that he usually has fight for him, and then he could separate that up into a bunch of these little brick bat things that can go and bite the enemy. So very, very intrusive there. His goal is to become King of the Pirates, but he doesn't want to take any initiative. I feel like if he really if he wanted it more, if he tried to make his own initiative, then there's not a single person that could stop him. But he didn't. He lazed around all day, left the other mysterious 3-4 members to do most of the work. He just kind of laid around. He wasn't really that much of an intelligent guy. If he spent more time reading into things, maybe becoming a little bit more intelligent, understanding, maybe his plan on trying to become King of the Pirates, maybe if he did that along with his own devil fruit and along with all these people helping him, he would have been a force to be reckoned with. But unfortunately, he was kind of an idiot, certainly a lazy bastard, and that's why he didn't get as far as he did, and that's why his story isn't over yet, but it basically got fucked over as soon as Luffy set foot on that island. Because Luffy does have ambition. He wants to become King of the Pirates, but he wants to do it himself, and he's got his crew, and they just basically wreck shop, you know what I mean? Now, the shadows that Moria rips out, though, do have complete dominance, obedience to him. Alright, so no matter what, even Luffy, who has an incredible amount of willpower, after putting his shadow in Oars, which, by the way, that was another stupid thing that Moria did, was resurrect Oars to begin with, right? Oars is your end game, alright? Oars is this massive, giant guy, but he resurrected him without really paying much attention to anything else, because you had the general zombies, which were the strongest zombies on Thriller Bark, and almost all of them were wiped out by Oars. by just, like, stepping on them. I'm like, man, Moria, you really should have thought this through. He's like your trump card, right? Like, you wait until you're about to conquer the Grand Line, then you wake up Oars. You know, that's how that shit's supposed to go down. But the Shadows, even after a little bit, Oars did not obey Moria. He had Luffy's willpower and shit, but eventually, regardless of the zombie, regardless of the Shadow, they will eventually bend to Moria's will. Which I guess he has a huge ego too, you know, that built the ego up. Like, I'm the master of this army, they'll do whatever I say, no, regardless. You know, I have complete dominance over them. So, a little bit now into what happened after Thriller Bark. So, Luffy kicks the shit out of Moria, goes into Giganto Jet Shell, pounds the shit out of Moria, gives him a freaking stomach pump. All the shadows are released. Everyone gets their shadow back. Lola gets their shadow back. Shinji gets his shadow back. Robin, Zoro, and Sanji and Luffy themselves get all their shadows back. He's left unconscious on Thriller Bark. Dr. Hogback rescues him, and they go and escape out to sea. As well as Absalom, too. I believe Absalom was there. They all escape off to sea. Perona is left... well, she got sent away by Kuma, so Perona's not part of it anymore. But eventually, I guess Moria regains consciousness, and he attends the meeting at the Marineford for the war. So Moria does partake in the war at Marineford. And by the way, this was the biggest, like, problem that you had with Moria's Devil Fruit. You could tell Oda sort of wrote himself into a corner with this. Oda maybe made the, he set up the weaknesses and he forgot about them or something like that. So, the problem with this is that Moria rips off the shadow of Marines and then, or pirates, doesn't matter, and then uses that shadow to resurrect Marine and pirate zombies at Marineford, right? Okay, well, that's pretty cool and everything like that. The problem is, like I said, the living body cannot touch sunlight or they will die. And this isn't Thriller Bark where it's all foggy and mysterious. This is in the middle of fucking Marineford where the sun is shining. It's in the middle of the day. So what should have happened was this. Moria takes a pirate at Marineford. Let's say it's a member of Whitebeard's crew. Cuts off his shadow. And then he loses consciousness. The sun is shining, he immediately fucking dies. Now, I don't know if in the anime they try to make it look like, oh no, there's fog in the background. Yeah, it was just a really foggy day on Marineford. But no, there's plenty of scenes where the sun is shining and everything's bright and there's no fog to be seen. It was a problem, not just in the anime, but in the manga. Oda kind of fucked it up. It doesn't matter anyway, because Jinbei immediately punches the shit out of Moria. He uses seawater to douse the zombies, and then just punches the shit out of Moria. And he just gets beaten up throughout the rest of the Marineford War. But that's a big issue with his fruit abilities, how they were changed, you know, for the Marineford, so he can use his power in the daylight. Anyway, after the Marineford War, Moria is in the back streets of the town, and he's getting the shit beat out of him by, I believe, two pacifistas and Doflamingo. And Doflamingo's saying, like, look, dude, you're weak, you're pathetic, you got your ass kicked by the Straw Hats, and you got your ass kicked here. We ain't gonna have any more weak sauce warlords, okay? We have enough shit already with Crocodile and everything. We don't need any more weaklings in this. So I was given orders to kill you, basically. And Moria's like, oh, you were given orders, you bastard. It must be Sengoku, the fleet admiral. And Doflamingo's like, nope, even higher. Think higher up, you little onion bitch. And Moria's like, oh my god. So it was probably the Gorosei. It was the 5 stars, the heads of the world government that decided Moria needs to go. He's no longer valuable to us, and he's just going to keep on losing, and he's kind of a liability. So, Doflamingo did not kill him, though. He was at death's door, and he was about to die when all of a sudden he just vanishes into thin air. He just disappears. And later on, Doflamingo's giving a report, and he said, like, ah, man, I didn't even know the Kage no Mi had the ability to make you turn completely invisible. I mean, that fruit has so many weird abilities. So, what happened, you know what happened? We found this out later in SBS. This is great. You remember Absalom? invisible dude, he ate the clear fruit, he has the power of invisibility. Absalom was present the entire time at Marineford. This is why I love extra SBS shit. I love that shit so much, Oda. Thank you. Thank you for giving me all the extra information. Well, anyway, so Absalom basically became a journalist. He became a freelance undercover journalist because using his power is like the perfect for journalists. So he was at Marineford. He was documenting everything that occurred at Marineford, all the war, wrote a huge article about it, made him really possible. His pain name is Absa. And then after he witnesses Moria getting the shit kicked out of him by Doflamingo, he uses his powers to make Moria invisible and then get him the fuck out of there. So Absalom saved Moria. We don't exactly know what happened with him afterwards, but he did save his former captain, I guess because he did, you know, at least he didn't want him to die. Absalom wasn't a complete prick. He was just a pervert that tried to molest Nami. That was a thing. And it licked Robin. Sick fuck. If anyone's gonna lick Robin, it's gonna be me. Okay, I'm just gonna, you just forget I said that. Anyway, so we don't know what's up with Moria right now, though. We don't know, but we do know Absalom is still around under the name Absa. He writes, like, whenever there's, like, a major event going on, I think he might have been present at Dressrosa, too. He might have been, he wrote another story after that, and we can see a ship, like, sail off in the distance, and that's his ship. But yeah, so Moria might be still with Absalom. Maybe he went off and did his own thing, or maybe he's just trying to lay undercover, like, I'm done with this shit, dude. He has a very, very striking appearance. I don't exactly know how you could lay low, but Absalom does have the power of invisibility, so if he's hanging out with him, he might be able to pull it off, because he's like the ultimate person on being on the down low. But anyway, that's Gekko Moriah. What do you guys think about him? What do you think about his character? Would you like to see him again later on somewhere in the New World? I have this theory that at some point Oda's going to incorporate a lot of these old characters that, like Eneru and Moria and, you know, the people we haven't seen in a while but are still, they're not dead. Oda makes a point to not really kill off a lot of his antagonists, and that's good because that can at least show up later on. Luffy's not the kind of guy that kills it. Rob Lucci, too. Rob Lucci is also a member of CP0. So he is probably going to most definitely appear later on. So I hope there's like an event later on down the line where you get to see all these like old villains reappearing again, stronger and better, and maybe taking on the Straw Hats in a more serious way. Well, anyway, thanks you guys for watching. I hope you have a happy Halloween, and tune in tonight on my channel if you're watching this on October 31st, because I'll be doing a Let's Play of Alien Isolation for the PS4. So check back for that. And hope you guys have a nice day. Tekking signing out. Ooh.